Pragmata is an interesting one. A completely new AAA IP coming from Capcom, announced in 2020, scheduled for release in 2022, only for it to be pushed into 2023, only for it to be delayed indefinitely, with a lot of fans being worried about a cancellation. But now it's 2025 and the game was re-revealed for 2026, and I actually got to play a demo for it at Gamescom, which felt unreal, but yes, Pragmata is in fact a playable video game, and for a completely new game like this, it really helped to have some hands-on experience, especially since it has such a unique combat system. But before I talk about that and all of my other thoughts on the demo, if you like videos like this, why not leave a like or check out my channel? Small things like that really help me out, and I really appreciate any support that you can give me. But with all of that out of the way, let's talk about Pragmata. The demo opened up on a little cutscene to give some context to what we will be playing. This cutscene was shown from a first-person POV of our main character, Hugh Williams, and his spacesuit was damaged. But just as things are starting to look bleak, we meet this android, DIO3367, also known as Diana, because nobody is gonna call her DIO3367 in a normal conversation, so Diana it is. And this is presumably their first meeting, as they don't seem to know each other, and the main character is kind of wary of her, but she immediately shows that she doesn't mean any harm by repairing his suit. But this is also where this cutscene ends already, as the screen faded to black and I got greeted by a text reading something along the lines of, "This following demo takes place a couple of hours after their meeting." And this is where we got into the gameplay itself. The demo mainly took place in this one area within a stronghold on the moon, starting with a little tutorial. There was this hallway with laser traps teaching you how to jump, how to use your jetpack to float, how to dash and how to dodge. Just the basic character movement. And I will say that the game itself felt great to control. There was a lot of weight to your character, which makes sense since you're a pretty big dude in heavy looking armor, but thanks to the jetpack it also gave you that feeling of being floaty, like you're in space. You could float around for a decent amount of time before landing back on the ground. The dash itself also felt great and responsive, and you could use it both while in the air to help you with platforming, but also while being on the ground as a dodge, which will definitely come in handy during combat. Which brings me to the first enemy encounter already, and the combat is really where the game shows how unique it truly is. I did watch all of the trailers that had been released at this point, but getting to actually play the game really gives you a feel of what it is truly trying to do, with the hacking being integrated in an active combat system. When I first heard of an action combat system and hacking, I was immediately reminded of how Nier Automata works when you're playing as 9S. They are quite different, as I'll get into in a second, but it does serve as a nice point of comparison, because in Nier you are also in a real-time combat encounter, but as soon as you press a button you start hacking the enemy. You get brought to the hacking screen, you do a little minigame, and then you get back to the action combat, with the enemy either dying or taking some damage with the combat continuing, depending on how much HP they have. And that's basically what I expected from this game, or at least I expected something similar. You're running up to an enemy, you're shooting them, you do a little hacking minigame, and then the combat continues. But that's actually not what it is, because the hacking in its entire minigame is happening in real time here. In the tutorial I ran into this enemy, and while I was shooting them, my bullets weren't doing any damage. So what I had to do was lock onto them by holding L2. We were playing on a PS5 by the way, but you know, L2, LT, the aim button, whatever you want to call it, and while aiming at the enemy I could initiate the hacking. A grid would show up on the right side of the screen and the cursor would take up one slot on this grid, where I then had to press the face button, so triangle, square, circle or X, to move this cursor and guide it to a marked location which was taking up another slot on the grid, hitting as many nodes as I could along the way. Reach this marked spot and the interface goes away again, with the enemy taking a bit of damage. But most importantly, their shield also gets broken, so you can actually shoot them and damage them with your normal bullets. But the unique part about this is that you can still shoot while you are doing the minigame. You can still dodge, you can still walk around, you can basically do anything while you're hacking. During the first encounter, this didn't really leave an impact on me, as it was clearly a tutorial fight and the enemy didn't fight back, but later on in the demo I would constantly be dodging and keeping track of other enemies, all while hacking into them, which was just extremely fun and a really innovative way of doing things. The game didn't pull you out of the action at any point. But while I have been calling this section a tutorial, I feel like I should mention that it wasn't really framed as one. The demo naturally just started me off somewhere and made me explore an area, but since you started in a hallway with traps, followed by a single enemy, it was definitely intended for you to learn the controls. But after this, the demo opened up a lot, as you enter quite a sizable area with a door in the center of it, being closed by 5 locks. So the goal of the demo was pretty clear. I had to explore this area, find 5 access points, hack into them, and then the locks would go open and the door would unlock. So let's talk about the exploration a little bit, which honestly pleasantly surprised me, because this area had quite a bit to offer. While searching for these access points, there were multiple platforming puzzles, where I had to hack into some control panels to open up different pathways or to create temporary platforms for me to stand on. I could hack platforms to start moving them, so I had to time my jumps between them. There was just some really fun platforming going on that utilized all of the control mechanics that I talked about earlier with the dash and the jumping and the floating. There was honestly a lot more platforming than I expected in this, and with all of the different control mechanics, it was quite fun and satisfying. A lot of those control panels that you had to hack into also used different minigames to unlock them, as the combat minigame is unique from these control panels, which are once again unique from the access terminals that you needed to unlock the door. And a lot of these hackable objects would also be kind of hidden in the environment. They're not all just placed at eye level. Some of them were up on the ceiling, others were behind the corner, others are off in the distance. So you really had to look around and explore the area in order to progress. It's not simply walking from marker to marker or from access point to access point. The area was also designed to be quite immersive, with a lot of natural waypoints like the lights to guide you. There was no yellow paint in sight. I guess Capcom really took all of the Resident Evil 4 remake drama to heart. And outside of just solving puzzles and doing platforming and hacking sections, there were also plenty of enemies around to fight in this area, both in small curated combat challenge rooms, I guess I could say, as you'd enter a hallway or something and the doors would close with a few enemies walking in, but also in the way of just natural encounters while you're exploring, with the enemies just patrolling the area. And this was really fun, especially because you're juggling a lot of different enemy types. Some of them would be running at you to perform a melee attack, but others are more turret-like enemies, so they're shooting you from a distance. You're keeping track of quite a few different things here, having to both dodge these enemies, fight back, and of course hack them. And this is also where they started introducing different weapon types, one of them being like a shotgun, aka one that's more effective at close range, and another one being used to stun enemies, as you could use it to shoot some type of stasis net at them, which would slow them down so you can either take your time hacking them, or so you can focus your attention on someone else while the other enemy is being slowed down. There were a few things that I wasn't really the biggest fan of with these weapons though, namely how little ammo they had, how the game introduced them, and how the overheating system worked. Now obviously the game is still in development, we literally don't even have a release date yet, and this is just a demo, so things could change, but a lot of guns barely had any ammo. The shotgun, if I remember correctly, only had like 5 shots, and if I used all of them, the shotgun would just disappear from my inventory and I'd have to find a new one. And this ammo management isn't really done in the same way as a Resident Evil, for example. The ammo management didn't really feel like a core part of the gameplay loop. It's definitely a small part of it because you need to hack the enemy before shooting them in order to not waste all of your ammo, but the guns were everywhere, so it didn't really feel like a valuable resource where I had to manage every single bullet. Which brings me to the next point that I mentioned, being the way that these guns were introduced, and it just felt a bit weird. They were literally just laying around, like you turn the corner and suddenly the stasis net gun was laying in front of you. I'm sure that in the full game they actually properly introduced the different weapon types, but I thought I'd mention it as it did feel really weird in this demo. The weapons would also overheat really easily, so you can't rapid fire them, and I'd imagine that the game would have an upgrade system to get rid of limitations like this. So while yes, this did make the gunplay feel a little awkward, I feel like this is either just a demo thing or it's an early game limitation thing, so they can provide a satisfying progression system when the full game comes out, or at least that's what I hope this is. Lastly though, I do want to mention that I did in fact fact managed to find all the access terminals which unlocked that door, which led me to a little room full of notes and world building, but also a boss fight, which really put everything that I learned in this demo to the test. The boss was pretty big and had a lot of HP, so I'd constantly be looking for openings to either shoot them or hack into them. I'd be switching between my weapons, dodging their ranged attacks, and also dashing out of the way when they charged at me. Right before the boss, I also found a little upgrade to make the hacking stronger, by the way, and this upgrade would add a special node to the grid. A node with limited uses, but every time I used it during a hack, the defense of the enemy would be decreased even further, so I could do some more damage for a small period of time after the hack. And because of this, I also feel like the hacking can be expanded upon a lot. The demo already had upgrades like the defense break one, but you also have nodes that you couldn't access, nodes that you had to go through in a specific direction and other stuff like that, making it so you really did have to pay attention to both the third-person shooter action and the hacking action. Kinda like in The World Ends With You for the Nintendo DS, where you're controlling two different characters on two different screens, each with unique combat mechanics, and there's your random reference to a masterpiece of a game that like one person will cheer for. I gotcha, man. But the combat flows really nicely, and this boss fight was honestly just a lot of fun, and outside of the weird kinks that I mentioned with the gunplay, the game really clicked with me here. I went into this demo not sure what to expect, but when I left I was completely sold. I genuinely think that it has a lot of potential if they keep expanding on the hacking and the gunplay in the same way that they expanded on it in the time frame of this tiny demo. Sadly, I didn't get to finish the boss fight though, as I ran out of time. But before I wrap up this video, there are a few tiny things that I do want to mention about the game, but I didn't really know where to fit them into the video, so I'm just putting them here. One of them being the characters, as during the whole demo you are of course playing as Hugh Williams, who is constantly accompanied by the android girl Diana, and this did give me a glimpse at their dynamic. Having this type of companion has definitely become a trend in gaming as of late. At first you had The Last of Us with Joel and Ellie, then you had God of War with Kratos and Atreus, and even outside of narrative-driven games you got Donkey Kong who's exploring with Pauline. And I've seen that some people are getting kind of tired of this dynamic system, as the companion character would often just talk and talk and talk, and they can kind of get annoying when some games use them to give hints and stuff like that. But I didn't really get that feeling here. I feel like this is one of the games that's gonna do the companion side of things quite well. Now of course keep in mind that I only had a limited time with the game, but Diana never gave me the feeling that she's gonna spoil a puzzle the moment that I walked into a room. In fact, I ran into multiple rooms and she didn't say a word, even though I was quite confused about where the access point was or how to progress. But that's also where the satisfying exploration comes from, as you are figuring it out yourself and you are finding your way yourself. Instead, Diana was mostly used to talk about the narrative behind the environment, and she would comment on the different notes that you find lying around. It was honestly quite nice to have their back and forth conversations while looking around the moon base. I feel like their relationship is going to be quite fleshed out by the end of the game. Talking about the moon base though, the atmosphere was also really well done, as the game was very immersive and had a really nice soundtrack, together with some very satisfying audio design, as the guns and the hacking all had some great and satisfying audio cues. Visually, the game also looked very good, but that's to be expected from the RE engine at this point. Capcom simply doesn't miss. But I feel like that's kind of it. In general, I just had a really good time with this demo, and it definitely made me excited to check out the full game when it releases. I do have some criticisms like the weapon stuff that I mentioned, and I am a bit scared that the hacking might get kind of samey or annoying after a while, since in the demo you had to hack every single enemy before you could fight back, but I only played a small part of a big game, so I'm sure that they'll keep expanding on these mechanics to keep them interesting in the long run. But what do you guys think of Pragmata? After this game was such a mystery for a while, I'm sure a lot of you have some thoughts now that we have more than a simple cinematic trailer, and I'm very curious to read what those thoughts are down in the comments. And while you're down there, a like is greatly appreciated. You know how the algorithm can be sometimes. And if you really enjoyed this video, why not check out my channel or even subscribe? Every bit of support is greatly appreciated and it helps me out massively. But I'm gonna wrap up this video here. Again, make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments, as I will be down there to talk to you all. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you all again soon.